Okay, well, welcome. I just wanted to welcome you to just chat about bottoms. Super excited that this film was made, and extremely excited that the three of us were able to work on it. I uh, I want to talk about a little bit about your history. Some of you, where you came from, where how you ended up on bottoms, and let's start with Francisco. So, Francisco, you were you were in Mexico before you ended up working for Crafty Apes and on the film Bottoms, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And in Mexico, you worked on some independent films as a VFX producer.
Correct. Yes. Yes. I started working in a company called Epix FX Studios right after college. And there I started as a coordinator for film and TV shows. Film mostly was for Europe, Turkey mainly, and TV shows were for the US. That was my first approach with the industry in the US, History Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, stuff like that. And yeah, right after, well, 5 years after I started working in this company of VFX in Mexico City, I study a master in film production here in Mexico as well. And then I went to DC, Washington, DC, to live and to look a job there. And well, the pandemic just started as soon as we arrived to the US in 2020. And then 2 years later, after long research and search for opportunities, I found you guys were Crafty Apes, and I started working with you guys in the 2022. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And Hannah, welcome, Hannah Park. Hannah
Thank
Park
you.
was the editor for Bottoms, and Hannah's background, she graduated from the New York City Tisch School of the Arts, along with some of the other key players on Bottoms.
Mhm.
And I'll let you maybe explain a little bit of that. But you're an upcoming editor. I mean, you're doing it. You came out of school and you made a film that was well received, and then that led into Bottoms. So the first one, I believe, was your first mainstream film was Shiva Baby,
Yes, yeah.
and fantastic movie. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's wonderful, and
Thank you.
I laughed and laughed and laughed and thought it was fantastic. And so when I had a chance to work on Bottoms, I was just super excited after I watched Shiva Baby, and I was like, this is going to be a fantastic film. And so welcome,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. If you want to say anything else about maybe you know, how you started in school
hmm
and how Shiva Baby even started, and then where you are now.
Yeah. So I met Emma, the director of Bottoms and Shiva Baby, during our summer course for film school. We were both transferring into the film program. She was already on track and she's a year below me. But we met through a mutual friend before the program even started. So we just kind of like hung out before, and then we started making our short film projects within the class. And I just like really liked her style, and like we clicked on like a friend level, but also I think on like a taste level as well. So it kind of made it really easy to kind of for me to at least be like, hey, like if you ever need like a short film to be edited, like I'm your girl. And so I think Shiva Baby was the short film was her senior thesis film. So at that point I had graduated, was editing for like digital content platforms like Refinery 29. And then I think during that time, we went to South by Southwest for the first time. And that's kind of like where it kind of got kickstarted for her and pursuing her feature, because then she could have this like, proof of concept. So, and then I think a few years later was when Shiva Baby feature happened. So I edited that while I was working full time at Viacom, working as an editor for like Comedy Central, BET. And so like on our nights, my nights and weekends, we would just be at my like literal office, like editing suite at Viacom, just working on the movie.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So it was still kind of like a true student type environment, like when you were working on that.
Yeah, even when we were doing the feature, it was just super run and gun, like very, very low budget. Like nobody was working on this movie for the paycheck at all. Like we all had like second jobs. So it was definitely like a passion project, and we were all like fairly fresh out of college. And so we were all just excited to work on our first feature. Like that was like put like stars in eyes, you know?
Nice, nice. And so that relationship continued, obviously. I mean, so you started this project, you worked on it together. Now, this was did Maria work on that as well?
Maria worked on the Shiva Baby feature,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
And
she brought her kind of key players into it.
okay, so Maria Rushi is was the
Hmm.
DP that's on Shiva Baby and Bottoms.
Bottoms.
Hmm.
So so you had this group of I'm just going to name the four of you because those I don't know all the other key players. So
Sure.
you have Emma, you have Rachel, and then you and Maria. And
Hmm.
would you say there was any other key players that kind of came in that maybe even helped out with Bottoms too?
I think on at least when we did like small like previews before we did like major previews, just like within the director's cut process, we did bring in a few people from the Shiva Baby world in just because we respect their opinions, and that was like our producers from Shiva Baby who were Kate and Kieran. But on like a actual crew level, like I think these were the only like four that were able to be attached to it.
Okay,
Mhm.
nice.
But for me, I know that they had to fight for Maria because, it's a bigger budget film, but thankfully for me, I had actually worked with Orion on the movie I worked on previous to Bottoms. So like they knew me already, so it was a little bit easier for Emma to be like, "Hey, like, can I work with this
Yeah.
person?" Because they already knew me and worked with me.
It does
Yes.
change, doesn't it, when you have a bigger studio involved? Things do
Yeah,
change. Yes.
definitely.
Okay. So you went from this run and gun, running out there, low budget, doing it for passion project, and now you're backed. Bottoms is backed by a huge studio, and they are now saying, now you got to do a production like a big studio does a production. how, I mean, how did that feel to go from the run and gun, and then now it's like, okay, you need
Yeah.
all the traditional key players that are there for making a big film.
Yeah, thankfully the movie that I just mentioned before Bottoms, which was called Anything's Possible, directed by Billy Porter, but was also an Orion film. That was actually like my first jump into like the big studio world where I had an assistant editor, I had an office, I had post PA. Like it was very like up to stuff, like with the union I joined with that movie. And so coming into Bottoms, it felt like a little bit more like I was familiar with the world. So like that was a little bit easier for me to at least help Emma because this was her first like forage into to union the big studio space. So at least like I had experience a little bit to kind of like guide her and like create kind of like a safer space, I guess, in the editing room.
Yeah. No, that's great. I have noticed, and Francisco, I don't know if you ever look around and dig into like editors and look at editors and directors or editors and actors and the relationship that they have.
Hmm.
But I took some time and I'll just do an example, like a live example. I'll jump over to IMDb real fast and take a quick look at one of my favorite films. And so I'm gonna look up. You won't be able to see my screen, but I'm gonna look up The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which I really love that film. And then if you go in and if you look, I'm just gonna jump over to the filmmakers. So you have Ben Stiller who directed it, but he also stars in it, right? And then if you kind of scroll down and you look at different composers, different editors, but so Greg Hayden is the editor on The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Now, what other films have Ben Stiller been in that's really popular? Like what is the most popular probably film that people know that Ben Stiller is in?
Oof, I feel like there's so many. There's something about Mary.
Yeah, there's that. Yep. And
Dodgeball.
so I'll give you a hint, which I think is probably one of the biggest, but it starts with a Z.
Oh, Zoolander.
Zoolander. I would
Yeah.
say that's probably one of his biggest. Like,
Yeah,
people know Zoolander. People love Zoolander. Okay. So who do you think edited Zoolander?
I guess him.
It's the same guy. Yeah. So Greg
Yeah.
Hayden edited Zoolander. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because that relationship, and you go through these other movies. I love Tropic Thunder. Thought that was a fantastic film. Same editor. Ben Stiller, same editor.
Mhm.
It's like these relationships are built, and that's what I like about when you have Shiva Baby and then you have Bottoms, and you have these relationships that are built, and it's like this strength, right? You have this real strength of a team that you're used to working with and you trust, and you know they're going to get your vision across. So it also like brought me to think how important an editor is, and so Hannah, like I'm glad that you had that experience with Orion. I'm glad that you were able to continue on with Bottoms, because to me that relationship with an editor and a director, or an editor, or and a writer, or an editor and an actor, those are going to continue. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you do more projects with Emma and Rachel, and Maria hopefully too. So, and Francisco, I'm going to transition over kind of to like what you do. So you were a VFX coordinator on Bottoms, but
Correct.
you've also produced in the past. So what can you explain a little bit about difference between coordinators, producers? How do you even become a coordinator? What is it? What is a visual effects coordinator? What are
Yeah.
you coordinating?
Yeah, well, a coordinator, what mainly needs is, a passion for order, to keep everything like super clear for itself. I mean, for myself and for the team. What is important to keep in mind is to let the team be clear and informed at all times about what is going on. I think the main task of a coordinator is to pass the information from all the other departments to the team who is doing the job, no, the digital artists, the compositors, the 3D guys. We have these meetings, for example, with Emma and with the producers of MGM, and we have to keep all the notes and all the idea of what was expected of each shot. And my task as coordinator was to relay that information and pass that information to the artist, no? First, like in writing, through our platforms, and then directly with them in meetings, to make sure they understand what was expected, and if they have any questions, any doubts or suggestions, actually, to improve the shot. And then I go back, with you, for example, as a supervisor, and then with Emma, and then it was like this ping pong communication, and I was right in the middle, to be being that link of in the team, no, inside the team, to pass the information, receive the information, and going backwards, vice versa, during the whole process. And I think that's the most important thing. I mean, to keep everything clear to yourself, and then that way be able to pass that order and then that clear picture of the movie to the team, right? And then, yeah, I mean, it's a whole process that just I mean, it starts just receiving the reception of the footage, classifying everything, and then, of course, with the help of the supervisor, in this case you, to assign those shots to the team, and then pass that to the team, and then receive the material and pass back to the production house, right? And then, I mean, for me, it's super exciting to be in that position. I liked it a lot, because it's like a huge responsibility to collect the work of everybody. I mean, that comes back way from the production, from the set, and then to us, and then to the editing. and then to the final product. So I'm just in between those huge teams and efforts. So that's what the coordinator task is about, I think.
That's and that's great. I don't think I could do my job very well without having you on board as a coordinator. I mean, that's literally, and I want to explain this a little bit because it's different. I would say it's different at every visual effects studio. You have your VFX producers, you have your VFX coordinators, you have your executive producers as well, which are usually in charge of sales and making sure the clients have, just client relations. But the VFX producer and the VFX coordinators are the ones that are really kind of driving the project from the client side, like that face with the client. Mm-hmm. And I would say Francisco in his VFX coordinator role is you spoke to the client more than I did, more than our really? VFX producer did, right? You are really that in between. Now, the other cool thing about at Crafty is we empower the coordinators to also speak directly with the artists. And what do I mean by that? So we would do rounds. We do something mm-hmm. we call rounds. And so rounds, I might jump in with Francisco and do rounds with him, we just kind of contact each different artist. Now we're not in this office anymore. Most people are remote. So when I did rounds in the past, when people were in the office together, you just kind of walk by everyone's desks. And then so it'd be like the visual effects supervisor and the coordinator together, and you'd walk by each person's desk and kind of see what they're up to, where they are in their shots, and talk to them and get some, find out, are you going to hit your deadlines? What's going on? Do you need anything? That kind of thing. Yeah. And then,
if you let me, Doug, I mean, that part is super important, like, that those rounds to be in touch with the team. But also, I mean, personally, I think that as a coordinator, you have to be super touchy about that. I mean, you have to know the right approach to them, because you cannot just push them like where is your shot and you are meeting the deadline, or how is it going? No, you have to give them as well the space, but also they have to know you are there for them, not necessarily because you are asking all the time, but also because, I mean, they reach you out and you are there for their questions, and luckily you have the answers for them.
It's very true, because if you don't approach it the right way, the artist might get angry or upset. Yeah. Like, why are you bothering me about this? Stop bothering me about my shots.
I told you yesterday. It's fine.
I know. I told you what I'm doing. Leave me alone. And so it's kind of like the bad cop. Like, so the visual effects supervisor doesn't have to be the bad cop.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in our experience with Bottoms and the team in Bottoms, these guys, our team was very aware of that task as well that we have as a production team. They have to pass that information to us, so we will be able to pass that information to the production house and to Emma and to the editor, to Hannah, to everybody. So they were like super cool about that. I mean, It was a fantastic team that I missed.
And I love that comment, because Hannah, I'm going to switch back over to you. That comment is so true. When I felt like, you and Josephine was the assistant editor, right? Mm-hmm. You, Josephine, Emma, and Maria. I didn't talk to Rachel much. I mean, she was more of the actor and the writer and the actor. But whenever I spoke to you or Josephine or Emma or Maria, everybody is selfless. Everybody was selfless. There wasn't, I would say there's no diva complex on our project. And I would say, from your opinion, how did it go on your end when you're in the cutting room, and what's going on? What's it like? And that kind of collaboration and relationship just within that cutting room. And I can explain, and Francisco can explain on the visual effects side of things, but I'm curious about on that side of things, how did it go?
I mean, when we're, I guess, communicating like the original vision, it's all to, supplement the story. So, when we added all those extra blood shots at the end, that was like to supplement, the realistic kind of like carnage that happened. But like everything was like basically revolving around like, does this make sense like within the story? But I also want to give a special shout out to my assistant Josephine Wheelwright because she is just like a killer in the assistant editing world. She is like so on top of like keeping track of VFX. Doing VFX reviews were so much fun because we'd just be clicking through and saying like old versions and new versions, and like we'd be marking up notes, and she would be, keeping track of like how we're feeling about certain things. So she was a superstar. But yeah, I think there were definitely things that we were really fighting for more than other things. And I think the studio eventually just understood like the asks that we were asking, like for the whole crowd shots at the end with like that kind of like 360 shot, like that was a huge ask. And for like a really short second, I think they were really considering not having that, but we were like, we need to have it. Like it's like the last like big shot, So there's a little bit of that too, but overall, we were like so happy every time we saw the new shots.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm glad. Yeah, you're talking about these very specific things that we were able to get right. You talked about the 360 shot, and this is a very critical moment in the movie, in my opinion, and because it's it's this last kiss
Like, yeah.
between yes and
Climax, right?
so I don't want to ruin it, but maybe I just ruined it for everybody. But but then but it's true. I mean, it was something that wasn't technically there from the beginning, but then as the filming happened and the story kind of progressed, that was a big part of it. I'm always wondered, the film ends on a visual effects shot, which I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to ruin it. But did did it have an alternate ending? Was there an alternate ending before that happened, or was that always kind of like, no,
That
we
was
knew
that
that
was
this was
written.
gonna. That was written.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was written. That was all written. And I believe, yeah, that was all set up in plans. That's why, like, even in the practical shot, there's like the light effect as well to supplement like the VFX.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna tell you what happens. You know that people kiss in the movie. I mean, it's a movie. It's a very specific movie about these girls that want to find other girls to make out with, basically. So we all know that from the trailer. How did you get Marshawn Lynch? How did anyone? How did this even happen? Right? I don't know if you know the backstory. Maybe you don't. But how did?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely asked Emma as well when we were editing. I think it was from the Orion side. I don't know. I feel like this is true. I think it was Alana Mayo on the Orion side who just kind of like put it out there, like, hey, like, what about Marshawn Lynch? And Emma didn't really know who he was besides like he had an episode in Murderville, which was hilarious. Like I saw that before I saw that Marshawn was attached to Bottoms, and he just like killed it in that show. But I think for him, he uh ultimately wanted to take the role because he actually has a gay sister. And when they were growing up, I believe that he was not accepting of her. And so it wasn't until like his adulthood, I think, that they became close again. And I think this was like his way. And this is like in his words in like articles that have been published, but like his way of kind of like making it up to her. I thought that was really sweet. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I've heard other interviews from Emma and Rachel where they talk about Marshawn Lynch, and they just
He was definitely my favorite. There is so much content of him like on the cutting room floor. Like there's like so much improv that we just couldn't fit in just because it would just be like a 2-hour movie at that point. But he was great. Yeah.
I think if everybody watched Bottoms, that he would end up in more movies. you
Yeah.
know, you get some execs watching Bottoms, and I guarantee you he's gonna end up in more movies.
Yeah. He should.
So you said that he was one of your favorite parts of the film. Is there anything else like from a from your kind of your responsibility, what your tasks are that was there anything that maybe was challenging in the editing bay, and you're working with it, and and you finally came to something that, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there, and something that came out at the end, and you were like, man, I'm just so proud of this one moment or something.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's all like such a long process, and I think we started cutting this like 2 years ago now. But I think one of the major things that came up in like previews were things about like critiques about the friendship between the two, Josie and PJ. And I think there was this aha moment that Emma and I had when in the scene when Josie's talking in that circle about her horrific story in juvie. Um, and initially PJ is like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you like lying? But then me and Emma had this aha moment like, oh, like I think PJ needs to be supporting the lie and she needs to be like reacting positively to Josie because like they're all in on this. And so I think that that really helps their friendship and to not make it feel like they like PJ like hates her, in any way or like has kind of like any type of judgment towards her. So I think that was like a special moment that we kind of realized in the edit. But
Nice.
yeah, lots of little things like that throughout where you're just kind of like realizing like little moments that you just switch like one take and then it kind of changes a lot.
I thought the film and you and all the collaborators did a very good job building that relationship. I rewatched the film just before doing this, and I saw that. I saw that a lot where that relationship is very strong. And so as those characters go throughout their arcs in the movie, and there's going to be highs and lows between any friendship, I think that those highs and lows become that much more powerful because of how you develop their relationship from the very beginning. I mean, the film starts out with the two of them. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was like that actually had one of my favorite parts too, that the post fair scene when they like are going into the car and Io has this whole like improv tirade about, marrying a gay guy and then having babies and having to go to church. And that was in the cut for like a very long time. And there was a moment where we were like, oh, like, can you tell that Rachel's like about to break right now? But like we were like, oh, it's kind of funny though. And so I'm ultimately glad we kept it in the cut because now it's kind of like on every like bottoms highlight reel.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That stuff is great. Hey, Francisco, when now I can mention how I saw the film for the first time, but I'm curious about you when you finally got to see the film. And it's always interesting when we don't get to see all the edits. We don't get to see every scene as visual effects people, right? We sometimes we rarely get audio a lot of the times, and so for us to get some clips with audio, even we're like, oh yeah, that's great. And so, what about for you? Is there anything when you went? When did you go see it? Did you see it in the theater? Did you see it on
Yes, of
streaming?
course.
When?
I, I,
Yeah.
I went to the theater about 3 or 4 times to watch it. I mean,
Nice.
Nice.
the first, I mean, I wanted to, to bring all my friends from DC and the family, to watch it. But, I wanted to watch it with my husband first. So we went to the very first day. It was in theaters in DC, and it was fantastic. I mean, I was so impressed about the response of the audience. It was full of teenagers, and it was fantastic. I mean, the reaction, and I was, like so emotional, to see that, I mean, I guess for anyone who work in our industry, when you saw your work in the big screen is, the best reward. And yeah, I mean, I loved it for the first time. And the other times I went to the theater, the audience was changing, one of those, it was full of guys of 30 or 40 years old, like me. So, and those guys were also super amusement. I mean, having a lot of fun. So it was like another experience, right? With the audience, that it was changing each time. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. The 3 times I went to
Yeah, I went to
Is
the
there?
theater with like 17 friends.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
I did that as well. And yeah, well, one of my now that you mentioned it, that we didn't have like an audio or you know, the soundtrack or the mix of sound with us, I was very surprised when we reached this scene when with the ambush to Jeff house and the total eclipse of the heart sounds in the background. It was fantastic. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
genius, genius, genius. I loved it.
Oh, there are so many moments in this film. I saw it in at South by Southwest, and it was the first time I'd ever been to that festival, and it was incredible. The audience, I mean, the audience makes a difference, and when you're in there and everybody's kind of in the groove with all the little one-liners, I mean, it was hard to hear most of the
Yeah.
jokes. Yeah, because
Yeah.
people
That's
are
what I was saying
laughing.
after too.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that's probably the same thing for you, Francisco. It's just hard to hear all the little one-liners that you're like, wow, that's really funny on its own. It's really funny. That's really funny. That's really funny.
Yes.
And so just and that's one of my favorite things about it was I couldn't stop laughing. I mean, I was tearing up because I was laughing so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
it
also
is.
sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, that I was thinking about the jokes and the lines and these parts of the movie when we have a lot of culture as well, you know. I mean, for the second movement of feminism, I mean, I learned stuff, you know, when they
Mm.
throw that joke about, oh, this is feels like the second wave of the feminism, and it's like, what is that? And we have to look out what is going on. And then my husband explained the whole thing for me because he's a feminist. So I mean, I think that that's fantastic, you know, that we have like also deep in the movie is a comedy, is humor, but also you have like a lot to discover there, no, with the story of
Mhm.
these guys.
Well, I wanted to transition to the film was filmed entirely in Louisiana. And so Louisiana, I'll just give a little history. Louisiana has a very produce. There's a lot of films that actually film in Louisiana, and have had. It's been that way for a while. They established some really good tax incentives a while back before a lot of other states had theirs in place. They were one of the first to actually have some really nice tax incentives for film. And then also now there's like video game and other types of tax incentives for people who work on that kind of stuff, interactive, whatever. But that was renewed, and it's it doesn't sunset for another, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. Um, Now, Hannah, you came in. You're in New York.
Mhm.
I live in Louisiana now. I didn't before. I've been here for about 4 years, 4.5 years, and I love it. I love the culture. I love people call me Mr. Doug, and so, like, I would call you Miss Hannah. That if I was being correct and respectable, and so Mr. Francisco. And I love that about the culture here, and my kids are doing that now too. They say that to everybody, and so I love
Wow.
it. And yes sir, yes madam, like it's all that kind of stuff. Now, um, from your perspective, since you were working so closely with Emma and Maria, did they say anything? Did you get a feeling about the crews and stuff that they were working with here, and kind of that experience of working in Louisiana? Now, I know there's some things that we could probably talk about that don't mind mentioning about how much it rains and stuff, but
Yeah.
but other than that, I don't know if did you hear anything? Was it from your perspective? What was it like?
For me, I think it was mostly like yeah, like a weather thing. I think there was a lot of, I think she said like locusts, like there was like a swarm of just bugs and insects sometimes. And yeah, the weather was the reason why they couldn't finish shooting the finale of the film. Um, so that's why they had to like go back like a couple months later to go reshoot that. But yeah, I think that was the most part. And I think also Emma was had a little bit of a complaint about some of the food options there because, coming from New York, we have a lot of like healthy options, and I think that was kind of like the main gripe she had. And I was like, "Welcome back to Salad Land."
I do enjoy the food here. I might have gained a little bit of weight since I've lived here, just a little bit. But I think it depends on the caterer that you use as well. I think there are, I've been on productions here where there are more healthy food options. But now I saw an interview with that Maria had done, the DP, and she had talked about the lighting crew. She talked about the lighting crew and how they were always extremely prepared for each and every scene that was up and coming scenes. So she would arrive on set and pretty much everything was in place, and she just had to make some final, like, little kind of tweaks, but everything else was generally just all set up, ready to go. And she gave a big shout out to the lighting crew. And I thought that was fantastic. And now, I watching the film, I mean, everything looks great to me. I mean, it's the production value of the footage to me is fantastic. I mean, it looks great, and the anamorphic, decision to shoot anamorphic was also great. I love that look. I love how the lens is distorted, and you get that kind of that distortion on the edges and stuff. Like, it feels really nice to me. And so I from that standpoint, as you're looking at the footage and you're working with it, I mean, how did you feel about that compared to like maybe working on Shiva Baby footage and stuff like that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, even when every movie I get, I'm like, oh, this looks like amazing, awesome, like good job, you guys. And then we get to the edit, and like the director starts like listing all the things that went wrong that day, all the stuff that they should have had, the stuff that's missing. Like, look over there. Like, do you find anything weird over there? And I'm like, no, I don't see anything. And then until it's like pointed out, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess there's like nothing actually like on the stalls at the fair. There's just like a bunch of like random stuff, but like no one really notices that, but except like the people who like worked on the film. Because like just seeing it from my end, I'm just like editing the footage, and I'm like, oh, it's like so beautifully lit, beautifully shot, like great performances. So like I don't really know anything until like the director comes in and starts spilling the tea.
And that's our nature, right? Sometimes we bring that up, but I will say that I'll go back to, I just had a great experience working with everybody on this. I didn't run into any roadblocks from a visual effects standpoint. We didn't. Everything was the communication between departments. I thought just amazing. More so, I would say one of the best, if not the best, communication I've had between departments.
Wow.
On this since the very beginning. Now, on this stream, I labeled it post production. I said we're kind of considered post production, right? But that's not totally true. I mean, visual effects goes out there right from the very beginning. We go on the initial tech scouts from when we're planning the shooting, and so and from your standpoint, you're probably there from close to the beginning too. On this one, I think you were there from the beginning, consulting with everybody from the very beginning, right?
Yeah. Just a little bit though. Just for I think when they were figuring out the choreography of like some of the
Mm-hmm.
stunt fighting at the end, and they were just figuring out, is this going to cut together? So that was kind of the only real work that I was doing before they shot. Just getting like iPhone footage that Maria shot of like the stunt people. But yeah.
Okay. And speaking of that sequence, I mean, there's a big fight sequence in the film, and one of the things that helped us a ton was Maria took the stunt actors, the stunt crew, and she basically filmed the entire fight sequence with the stunt crew to give everybody a good idea of the camera angles she needed, and to really help us tally up how many visual effects shots we might have in that sequence. And that doesn't happen very often for us, for someone to go in and actually take the time to really do that. Sometimes we'll get storyboards, and some directors will follow those to a T, but then sometimes they're just kind of general representations. Now this was like real camera angles, everything, and we could count exactly how many times we saw the stadium and needed to add crowd in, all that kind of stuff. It was just super helpful. I thought that was, I really appreciate Maria doing that, and she communicated all along the way, this is what we want, this is what we're going to do, we're going to give you this, and then we would go back and say, okay, if you're going to shoot something this way, or if you need this, here's the best way to shoot it. Here's some boards for you to, if you only have if you only have 50 extras, here's how we're going to lay them out in the stands and things like
Hmm.
that. And so that communication was just spot on. And then even with our, Ted Decker, who I spoke to quite a bit, he's one of the executive producers, but he was also UPM on the show. And so it was, just communicating with the team, the boots on the ground, just, it was all there. And I don't know, Francisco, have you ever been on projects that weren't that way? We never have projects that don't go smoothly, right?
Yeah, no, no, no. No, I
No,
mean,
no,
well,
no, no.
no, sorry, I was just remembering right now about the stands and the stadium, our process in Crafty, how complex it was, to organize all the angles, remember?
Hmm.
I mean, and
Yep.
all the perspectives from each shot to make the crowd real. And I remember it was like I don't know, hundreds of shots and angles and how to organize that in our system to make it reachable from the artist to put it in their shots. So yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that was like kind of overwhelming in the beginning, but yeah, it turns out it's great. I mean, after we get everything in place, to just wrap the shots.
Yeah. Yeah. And Maddie Kornman was someone who actually was critical in a lot of how
Yes.
that
Yes, yes.
organization.
Actually,
Yeah.
in that part of the process, the whole team of coordinators was there in Bottoms.
Everybody was doing it.
Not
Oh,
just
that's
me.
right.
I mean, the
Yeah.
PM and the other two coordinators on
That's
the
right.
company to help us out because it was massive. Yeah, but it worth it. You're right.
Yeah. And there's someone that couldn't join us today that was planning on potentially joining us today was our visual effects producer Sumi Ray, and who I know she had a great experience on the film,
Yes.
and she was planning on, she's not feeling well, so she couldn't make it, but she was planning on being here with us, and it would have been nice to have her and get her kind of insights on what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, Sumir was my mentor, pretty much, entering in the show and in the company. Yeah, she was great.
cool. Well, Francisco, you mentioned your husband,
Mhm.
Hannah. You were recently married, I believe, and
Yes.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
I
Thank you.
mean, it was like a
It's
month
like a
ago.
month ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Super congratulations for all that. That's, one of the things I like to point out is we're all real people, right?
Yeah.
Even though we do this, and Hannah might be busy, extremely busy when she's working on a film, and us too. We have real lives, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fantastic to see, you know, you taking that step. I just think it's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Harold's been we've been together since before the Shiva Baby feature. So he's
Oh
kind of
wow.
seen my career progress from like basically college to like now.
Nice, nice.
So
And
I'm sure it's
so
been fun for him too.
that's great. That's great. And it sounds he must be super supportive if he's known you since then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. Never would have thought an editor for YouTube would have been into feature films now.
And that's where you started, just editing YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, I'd interned a bit like in college, did like a trailer editing internship and then did like, distribution internships. But after college, that's when I was like, I need a paycheck. So I did like video editing basically. Yeah.
Okay. And then now that we've talked about Shiva Baby, we talked about Bottoms, and so for both of you, what's next? What, you know, has anything happened since Bottoms that's like, a highlight that.
I mean, I had Pony Boy that came out at Sundance. It hasn't been distributed yet, but I'm hoping that they figure something out with that because it's a great film and people really should see it. And then right now I'm just working on like a very small indie that's based on a true story starring Tim Blake Nelson. So trying to do Sundance for that one as well, but that'll keep me occupied throughout the summer. But other than that, like industry is really slow. Thankfully, it doesn't look like we're striking anymore. So hopefully things pick up in the fall. Yeah.
I think we're all hoping for
Well,
that.
same here. I'm waiting for no more strikes and to, recover, to go back to business. Yeah. Um, right now I'm taking like a little break here in Mexico and taking the chance to work on my film. I wrote a script a couple of years ago, and right now I'm like polishing to see well, to produce it. So
That's
Nice.
that's
awesome.
what I'm doing right now to see what happens.
That's great. That's great. Let us know if you need any help.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of people there.
There's a lot of people helping you right now, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you both jumping on, and I will say it was a little bit of short notice for Hannah especially, but thank you for jumping in, and I appreciate just this little chat. We wanted to hit this at the tail end of Pride Month. Very proud of the film Bottoms and all those that put so much effort into it. MGM was great to work with. Allison Small at Brownstone was again communicated with everybody, like even with us directly, just calling us and saying, "Hey, we got some ideas about the visual effects. What do you guys think about it?" And to have someone at that level at one of these production companies and studios, it's just
Yeah.
you know that people have their heart in a film like this, and this was definitely a film like that.
Yeah. There's always like one anchor producer in every production that I'm in, and she was definitely the one. Yeah.
Hmm. Cool. Well, thanks again. And,
Start
we'll
for
do something like this again, probably.
Thank you so much. Had a lot of fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
guys. See you.
Bye bye.